Hello, Dan, and welcome to the Omnia podcast. And as I've already said hello, I'll say hello again. How many times have you been here? This is the second time in the Omnia podcast.
Second time Omnia.
And have you done the Modern Mind with Fergus 2 times or 1 time?
Just the once, last week, so that'll be coming out soon.
So third time round the post with one or two of us or all of us. And excited to have you back, mate. We're here discussing swimming today. We're gonna kind of break down what that would be. Before we do that, I suppose it's the usual ask everybody to do the housekeeping things, which I always forget. Fergus is much better at this. A case of subscribe, press all the buttons, do all the things, share all the things, repost, post, all the stuff people know how to do. If you can do that and follow all the signposting things that we've got here, that'd be exciting. But we're not here to talk about signposting or subscription points. We're here to talk about swimming.
Yes.
And I guess for anybody who hasn't seen the previous podcast, this is the bit everybody hates. Anybody who hasn't seen the previous podcast, and I would urge anybody who hasn't to kind of go back in that back catalogue, have a look, because the first time you're on, we got a real opportunity to kind of dig deep into who you are and what you've done.
Yeah.
But if you can, mate, and I know a legend like yourself is going to struggle with this, but if you can you give people a little bit of a kind of a potted introduction to who Dan Wallace is and why we might have you here?
Yeah, so you can probably guess I am a swimmer. I always have been a swimmer. I've swam all my life and was fortunate enough to kind of get to that top level, representing Scotland at the Commonwealth Games, coming away with, I think it's 5 medals now, gold, a couple of silvers and a bronze, so feel pretty accomplished there. And then Olympic Games as well, which is every Olympic athlete's dream, every swimmer's dream is to make the Olympics. And I was fortunate enough to do that, but then go on as well to come back with a silver medal. And, you know, the experiences I've gained from swimming, racing, like some Michael Phelps and the best of the best has been great. And then kind of from there, transitioning into a lot more outdoor swimming, cold water swimming, so kind of trying to tap into almost all the areas of the sport. But swimming's been a massive part of my life, and it still very much is. Yeah. Even when you're talking there, my mind gets blown. I remember sitting with you in the first podcast and just enjoying the fact that we could dig deep into somebody who's had such a. I think you're very modest about it as well. The things that you've had, you know, a World Championship gold medal, correct? Yep.
Olympic silver, Commonwealth gold here on home turf as well. Yeah. It's big things. You know,
it's good fun.
Very impressive, and for that reason, the experiential stuff mostly. We're excited to have you here today to talk about swimming, essentially. About from our perspective, we're looking at hybrid athletes. From your perspective, you're looking at a lot of different athletes that come to swimming from kind of multi-sport reasons or swimming directly as a sport. And what we wanted to do today is kind of pick your brains and pick that knowledge and see if we can't cover off 3 mistakes that we find that swimmers make when they first come to swimming. Yeah. And I guess our paradigm here, or our approach, Omnia, is that we find people coming to swimming who haven't really looked at swimming much at all before. So they're coming to swimming maybe with a strength bias, or this is their first foray into triathlon. And so their swimming might be a very new thing for them. So I think we'll run down 3 key mistakes we think, and crucially 3 solutions that we can find for that. Yep. And we'll probably get into the woods. Would we get into the woods with swimming, Jamie? We don't do that, do we? We'll get into the water. Yeah, get into the water. And find ourselves kind of in those murky depths with some of the experiences that I've had. We've been talking about earlier on, and things that might speak to the listeners. So I'll kind of kick over to you and let you tell me. I think we discussed earlier on kind of things that we think are key mistakes, but the number 1 mistake in your mind, this doesn't have to be in priority order, by the way, but the first mistake you find that people are coming to you with swimming. Yeah, I mean, the amount of lengths that I've personally done myself, the amount of swimmers that I've seen and worked with and speak to, there is one main mistake or one main challenge that almost everybody has faced, and that's to do with the breathing. And there's kind of 2 ways to look at the breathing, in my opinion. There is the physical, how do we breathe? How do we take in air? How do we control our breathing in the water, whether that is pool swimming, cold water swimming, or just open water swimming? Just the sensation and the fundamentals of how we're bringing in air and circulating around our body is the first area. And then there's the technical side of breathing. Now, if we didn't have to breathe in swimming, we wouldn't, but we do, right? So we have to somehow, you know, move our body in a way where we're allowed to
get air into during our stroke. So there's like a technical way of actually getting that breath in, and then there's a physical, how are we breathing air in? What is it doing to us as, you know, is it helping us perform? Is it helping our mood, or is it doing the opposite? Is it actually impacting us in a negative way? And that's a big thing. You know, people struggle with breathing. So as we sit here now, we're breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth, quite relaxed. That's kind of helping us just stay nice and calm. We're not even thinking about it. It's happening subconsciously. When we go swimming, we're told, okay, you got to do it the other way around now. So you got to breathe in through your mouth, and ideally out through your nose, or just out however you want. But breathing in through your mouth is not normally how we do it. We're kind of just slowly, subconsciously breathing in through our nose right now. So immediately you're doing it in a way that you've not done it before. And then you're told...
Sorry, are people even conscious of that? Because I don't think they are.
Yeah, so they're like, it feels different. It's like, well,
but not
you're
quite
doing
sure
it like
why.
backwards,
Yeah,
essentially.
okay.
So that's something that people maybe don't think about. So it's just like, if breathing is just black and white difficult for you, like just sit here and just breathe, you know, in through your mouth for a second, and just, that's the way you're gonna have to do it in the pool. So get used to that. So we then go from there to saying, okay, you can now only breathe at certain points, and when you're not breathing, it's not like you're just choosing not to breathe. You physically can't breathe because your face is underneath the water. You know, on paper, this sounds horrendous.
You're not selling it to me at all.
But it can be broken down. It can be simple, because breathing has such a big impact on the stress of your body, the tension of your body. Now, if you've ever tried to go into the pool and just kind of float there and bob around, if you're tense, if you got a lot of muscle on you and you're physically tensing your muscles through uncomfortableness, or just you're trying it out, you're going to sink, right? So a tense swimmer is a sinking swimmer. We want to be nice and light. We want to be nice and soft, nice and relaxed. So your breathing has a massive impact on that. So it's just kind of teaching people that, you know, being comfortable with having their face in the water and their breathing limited. And when they do breathe, it's not gasping for air. You know, it's that instinctiveness. Okay, this is the only breath I'm going to get, so I'm going to, you know, sharply breathe in. That just causes you to panic. That causes you to be really stressed and uncomfortable. So it's just, first of all, getting like a breathing pattern. So knowing how often you're going to breathe. So for me, I breathe every 2 strokes. That's just technically quite comfortable for me to do. From a technique standpoint, it's quite nice to be able to breathe to both sides. You don't pick up any bad habits. So breathing every 3 strokes, for example, once you tell yourself that, you go, all right, so I'm going to get, 3 strokes probably takes, let's say, 3 seconds. I'm going to get a nice gentle breath in, or a deep breath in, whatever you want, every 3 seconds. I can probably deal with that. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people get in the pool, they hold their breath for almost as long as they can, and then they've got no air. So when they do breathe, they're gasping for air. It's just the wrong way to do it. So you just commit to, okay, I'm going to breathe every 3 seconds, every 3 strokes, whatever it is. And it calms your mind. You go, all right, okay, it's going to be okay. And then it's just going through the motion of breathing in through your mouth and out through your nose. And the reason I say out through your nose is it just controls how quickly you can exhale.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
You don't want to dump all your air out, because as soon as you dump all your air, you're going to need another breath. So you almost need to control that exhale for those 3 strokes. So by breathing out of your nose, it just limits how fast you can dump that air out. So yeah, that's kind of the first thing, is just being okay with figuring out when you're going to breathe, how you're going to breathe, because it's just slightly different than you would be doing on land. Yeah. You know, a lot of swimmers as well, they'll hold their breath and they'll be really tense, and then they'll dump it all out, and then they'll go through that. They'll go through that cycle for 25 minutes. And imagine going for a run or a walk.
I was going to say, I feel like I can put my hands up and say me.
Yeah,
me,
it's so
almost every point you're making.
And they just do it in a tensed, panic way. And imagine going for a run or a walk even, and holding your breath for 5 seconds and then dumping out. And then holding, you'd be
It's a great analogy, actually, because you just wouldn't do it.
You just wouldn't do that. Yeah. So you've got to just try and control it as much as you can, okay? And not panic and overcompensate because you're only getting 1 breath every 3 seconds. In the grand scheme of things, that's probably okay. That's probably enough. So just control how much air you're breathing in, how much you're breathing out, and the way that you're doing it. And then to dive into the technical side of it, like I said at the start, if we didn't have to breathe, we wouldn't, because it interrupts our stroke, okay? And it's all about reducing our drag, maximizing our efficiency in the water. So by turning our head and our body to the side to get that breath in, something we have to do. So it's about making that as technically sound as we can. So like your body works as a seesaw on an axis, right? So if you have to lift your head up to get a breath, you're going to put pressure on your feet and your hips to drop. That's going to cause drag. So it's how do we turn our head to the side to get that breath in without having to change too much about a regular stroke. So it's just trying to keep your head nice and low. And this is maybe more for the pool swimmers, because in the open water that you may have to lift your head a little bit more out of line, just because there could be waves. You might even be looking where you're going as part of that breath. So it's just about trying to fit that breath in as naturally as you can to your normal technique. It's trying to keep your head nice and low, not twisting your neck either. So from a technical standpoint, rotating your body to get the breath is going to allow you to stay in this position here, more or less. If you turn your neck, I hear all the time, I've got a really sore neck when I go swimming. Well, you shouldn't, because technically your head should stay static, just as it is, as we're sitting here right now. And when you need a breath, you turn your body to the side. So I hear people say, I've got a sore neck. It's because they're twisting their neck to get that breath in. And also, you kind of cutting your circulation off slightly there as well.
Yeah, it's not as easy to breathe like that, is it?
It is. You feel, because it's the easier movement. But actually, if you just fit it into the rotation of your stroke, it's easier for you. You're in a better position. You're not going to drop your legs. You're going to stay nice and sound technically. So it's like these little things. And I focus a lot on the technical side of swimming, because I know that if you tweak a couple of those things, it can feel so different. Like swimming, when done incorrectly, technically, is hard. I get that. I was once that swimmer when I wasn't technically sound, and it was really difficult. And I focused so much on just improving the technique of every aspect of my stroke, my breathing, my propulsion, my legs, my body position. And suddenly, this can actually be quite, dare I say, easy and therapeutic. And I just want everybody to feel like that. And breathing is the number one thing. People are panic breathing. It's stressing them out. It's causing them uncomfortableness, and then technically they're maybe just doing it slightly incorrectly. So there's kind of two sides of it, but you can see when someone does that correctly, their swimming is going to completely transform. So it's the number one thing I try and work on.
Breathing. So let's break down two parts of that and see if we can't find sort of a couple of tips. I know that what you've discussed already, there are many kind of components in there, and there are a lot of things you could look at. So arguably, if you were looking at me, if we went to the pool now, you would find that all the things you said that could go wrong were going wrong. I'm happy to admit that. So if you were to say to somebody, let's consider our situation now, and I know that your platform at the moment as well, the way that you're talking to swimmers through Swimmer, you are often talking to them remotely as well. So what would be, let's say online, you and I are talking, and I have not a great deal of experience in swimming, but you've quickly identified that, Jonny, breathing is something that we're going to have to get ahead of, first of all. The two components you've got are one, that sort of physical mechanism of breathing, and the second one is around technique. And I guess overarching in all of that is this kind of this concept of just relaxing into it. What would be, maybe, I know this is difficult to do perhaps, but maybe the one or two kind of key things that you're going to say to somebody on session one after that conversation? Okay, next time you go back in the water, Jonny, here's what I want you to think about.
So it can sound really simple, but I think it's good to make it simple, especially with the breathing. So you kind of start at that baseline level where you're like, if I struggle with the breathing, stresses me out, it causes me panic. So it's just trying to teach yourself, because trying to work on your breathing and work on swimming, if you're maybe not a completely natural swimmer, is very difficult to do. So it's just trying to isolate the movement first. So for me, I could be stood in the shallow end of the pool, both hands on the side of the pool, and I'm a couple inches away from the water. And it's just going through the motion of just breathing in through your mouth, submerging your head, slowly breathing out. In through your mouth, slowly breathing out when you...
So essentially not really swimming at all, just getting used to that.
You're practicing the physical airflow and the air control, but you're not having to worry about swimming.
I thought about doing that in my sink at one point, and I thought maybe that was stupid. But perhaps that would have been quite a good idea.
As simple as that. It might sound like, because a lot of athletes they're very capable athletes. When you ask them to do something as simple as that, like, I'm a bit beyond that. Well, get this right. The rest is going to be super easy.
That's interesting.
It's literally just mimicking that movement. From there, you can progress that to just having like one hand on the wall, and instead of having your head, you have your head down and then you turn your head to the side. So you slowly start to introduce the movement of the breath whilst you're working on the airflow and the breath control. So
I guess from there you can work a little bit on that technique of that rolling the body from.
So you work on the rotation. So being able to take away the swimming aspect of working on the swimming skill, I think is a really important thing to do, because it's very hard to do that. Like swimming, for most people, they have to be thinking about a lot of different things at the same time. And I try to make them not do that, but you have to stay afloat and to continue to do what you're doing. So just isolating the movement without having to bother about the swimming in the swimming environment, in the water environment. You can do it in the pool, you can do it in the open water, you can do it in your bathtub if you want.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because another part that comes from that, and I'm sure you've experienced this with athletes, is that again, athletes especially that are coming as we've got, and I know that you've got from other backgrounds or other disciplines where they're really possibly very proficient or even very, very good.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to come to something like swimming and which you think, well, I swam as a kid and I did this and did that. And then I don't particularly have this problem, but I know many athletes will, is feeling a little bit silly, saying, oh, well, I want to get in and I want to swim. But I guess it's like anything. It's like, you're not going to, if you haven't jumped on a bike before, get all your kit on, jump and go on the motorway, are you? It's like, why don't you just go up and down the park here a little bit? And, you know, everybody starts with stabilizers,
Totally. And I think that it's funny, like going for a swimming lesson, right? As an adult.
Yeah.
It's not many people are going
taboo,
to want to
isn't
do that,
it?
right? It's like, oh no, that's like, it's not cool or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what you're doing and what we're doing is trying to make it more accessible to do that. So like, I've got all these things that I want to pass down to people. If I can't be in front of them in a room where they're most likely not want to be there anyway, because they don't want to admit they're going to a swimming lesson at age 40 or whatever, when they can, they can run an Ironman or whatever, or an ultra marathon. So it's like making it more accessible for them to do. So there's so much you can learn kind of online and go and practice like in your own time, essentially kind of behind closed doors in your local pool. But sometimes it will feel like silly practicing those like baseline fundamentals. But once you've done that correctly and you've mastered that, everything else is so much easier.
Listen, if I'm in the pool and I'm hanging on the side on one arm, breathing the way you've just told me, if anybody criticizes, I can say, well, Dan Wallace told me to do it.
Tell them to come see me.
I haven't got a problem with this at all. If you have, you're talking to the wrong people.
Absolutely.
So I know that everything we discussed today is probably, there's probably many factors that kind of sit underneath it and lots of ways you can play, but there is with every sport. But so number one there, we've kind of looked at is breathing, which seems like a kind of an obvious thing to people, but it really isn't, is it, when you think about it that way, especially what you said about the tension. Yeah. I think a lot of swimmers, first-time swimmers or first-time triathletes are going to feel that tension. Yeah. And it's almost, I really love what you said about the going for a run, going for a walk. Yeah. And we do actually say that to people. Quite often people run and they do find themselves tight and tense. They're, where are your shoulders? Oh, they're up around my fucking ears somewhere, right? Okay, well, there's a problem to start with, So, the same can be applied. Mistake number 2 then, where would we go from here? That's kind of the first thing you do. And I did expect to hear that breathing would be the number one, but let's assume that Jonny has gotten past this opportunity, this moment of kind of this panic breathing and this tightness. What's coming next? What do you see as being something that you, not necessarily mistakes, I suppose, but just sort of the next query point for people?
I think that people, when they go swimming, if they're training for something, for example, they're very focused on how far they swam, how fast they swam, like the times they're going. People are obsessed with data these days. I think it's great. Everyone's got a watch on. Yeah. I never swam with a watch on, so I don't quite get that. But at the same time, I had a coach.
I've tried, but I can't see it. Like, at what point am I going to stop and look at a watch when I'm swimming? It's always out ahead of me somewhere or behind me.
Exactly. People get obsessed with it and they overanalyze it, and they, every time they go for a swim, it's about how far they went and their pace. And there's obviously great ways to use that. But for me, that's not my reference point when I go swimming. Is, I swam further today than I did yesterday, or I was going a little bit faster. Like those are great things to be aware of and to use correctly. But for me, it's your efficiency in the water. So distance per stroke. Okay, so a really nice reference that you should just do, even just at the start of your session when you get in. Count how many strokes it's taking you to get to the other end of the pool, whether it's 25-meter pool or a 50-meter pool. Start to understand what your baseline stroke count is, okay? So then you can reference that to the times you're going. So I was taking 10 strokes a length and I was going 30 seconds a length, okay? And that was good for you. You're feeling good that day. You might come in the next day and be like, I'm taking 13 strokes now. Probably taking too many. You're slipping through the water. So it's a really nice reference point that isn't about more, or faster, but it's more about like, right, I'm doing things sound, I'm doing things correctly, because it makes you zone in on the little things. Again, technical point of view, right? So if you're getting further with every stroke, your propulsion is higher, your drag is less. That's exactly the balance that we want. So if you feel like you're spinning your wheels essentially and you're not getting anywhere, then forget about the times, forget about swimming far that day. Think about your distance per stroke, your stroke count, your stroke analysis. And then it's a really nice thing to focus on rather than thinking, all about swimming further each day or faster each day. If you want to do that, become a more sound technical swimmer. And I think that having something like a stroke count to work on, and I used to do it all the time, and I became like obsessed with it. In a good way.
In a good way, I was going to say,
if I was counting my strokes, I was thinking about my strokes. I was thinking about how I'm moving through the water, and then applied that with whatever intensity I had that session, and you're on to a winner. So it's just having a reference point every time you get in that isn't based off intensity, speed, or distance.
It's an interesting point you make as well, because the reference point then is a reference point based on you.
Yeah.
Because for about half a second there in my mind, I felt like I should ask, what would be a good amount of strokes to get for 25 meters? But the answer is, it depends on the individual, isn't it? So it depends on you. If I'm making it in 12 strokes in 40 seconds, then that's my benchmark point from which to test and monitor efficiency.
Yeah. So it's finding that what your stroke count, for example, is when on a good day, when you're swimming well, when technically you feel good, maybe your times are quite good for just your easy swimming. So then that's your that's your starting, but that's what you're always trying to get to. So if you feel like maybe one day you're taking even less strokes, now you've progressed, you've gotten further. That's like something that I used to use all the time in training, but then also like in racing. So say I'm racing 100 meters freestyle against the best in the world. We both go down the first length and we both turn together, but I've taken 6 more strokes. Physically, I've probably exerted a bit more then. So that second length, he's probably going to have a bit more in attack left because he's been longer, he's been more efficient. So 9 times out of 10, he's going to put me at the wall. So
are you able to count his strokes?
No, unfortunately not. But it's like, as sports science, it's so great. They use so much like video analysis and stuff. And I was quite old school, I'll be honest. I liked to just get my heart rate up and just bash up and down. But I did appreciate that it was down. You had to spend time to look at video feedback or just thinking about what you're doing. I think that for me, if you want to swim fast, you have to swim slow correctly first. And that is all down to your technique. Having nice reference points that has nothing to do with egos or I'm swimming further than you or I'm swimming faster than you. This is my stroke count. This is my efficiency. I'm working on that to work on the rest.
There's a phrase I've always really liked that applies perfectly here, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah,
and that's
totally
that's so perfect for that. But and again, I suppose to a degree, you mentioned it very briefly there for yourself, is that there's probably got to be a little bit of play in there that speaks to ego a little bit, which is not always trying to kind of bash at it and go 100%. I find that with swimming personally, and the feedback that I get from our end when we're talking about swimming with people is that people tend to want to try and go as fast as they can, which I guess does apply to other sports. But even if you were doing your track work or something and you had 400 meter repeats, you would have a particular kind of efficiency mechanism. You would have, I'm going to think about my gait, think about my form, and these are my times. You're not necessarily going to think, I'm going to run this one as fast as I possibly can. Otherwise, things are going to go wrong very, very quickly. But it seems to be something that does apply to swimming quite a lot.
I don't know why.
People get in there and smash it. I don't know. Maybe it's just they want out. I don't know.
Maybe they're just trying to get over and done with, which I can totally understand. But it's like, every time you get in the pool, it's not about going as hard as fast as you can. I was like, there's so much. I mean, I was swimming like 11 times a week, and nowhere near all of that was fast or as fast as I could do. It was as fast as I could do. There was so many different intensities and training, kind of programs and models and zones that I was going through. A lot of it was easy swimming, slow swimming. Like, we focus so much these days on nutrition, rest, and recovery. Okay, those are all about getting your body ready to go again, for example. Now, every time you go to the pool, that can also help for your recovery and your rest. And swimming it's great for your joints, right? So it's good physically on you. You can do it to loosen off after maybe a heavy lift session in the morning, go for maybe an easy swim at night. That's helping you for the next day. So it doesn't always have to be detrimental to how you're physically feeling. It doesn't have to be harder and fatiguing you. It can actually be like, people go for recovery runs all the time. Why don't you go for a recovery swim? Most people are like, no, swimming's meant to be hard and fast.
It's like, weird, isn't it?
At times, but like, give yourself a day off, but still go to the pool and like work on your technique. Just work on your technique.
To your point about technique as well, I wonder whether or not there is, I used a track analogy there to try and kind of compare the two, but they don't compare in a certain sense, because your feedback on sports where you're not got your head under the bloody water is that you can kind of see what you're doing as well, and you can kind of experience it. I think right back to your point on technique is if you have a mechanism like you've just described with the stroke, what would you call it? The stroke rate, I suppose, over a length is your driver, and you know that efficiency is going to kind of play into that, etc., etc. Then that mechanism for understanding what your body's doing is closer to you in that sense, rather than just I'll blast at it and see how quickly I can get to the other end, which does seem like sort of at least a logical metric, but perhaps not the most intelligent approach.
Totally. And it's like, if you can focus on your technique. So for example, if you're doing a triathlon, right? You're fit. You're a fit person if you're doing a triathlon. I know you are. You know you are. Right? That's why you're doing a triathlon, because you're fit. You're capable, right? Yeah. So it's not always about, okay, I need to become a fitter swimmer if I'm doing my first triathlon. You don't need to be a fitter swimmer. You're already fit. You need to be a better swimmer. So you're getting through that, because it's the smallest portion of the race, right? It's not, the triathlons are not won and lost in the swimming. You can make up whatever you're behind in the cycle and the run. So it's like, if I can get someone to swim better through that first part of the race where they're not completely exhausted. You know, they're not at the back. They don't necessarily have to be at the front, but they're in the mix, but they're not completely gassed. Now that's going to probably come down to maybe a little bit of conditioning, swimming conditioning, but a lot down to the technique. Yeah. You know, if you can work on your efficiency in the pool, that's teaching yourself how to swim so correctly, and then applying a little bit of intensity at the right times at the start of triathlon, you're getting through that. You're breezing through it, rather than it being like, you know, you start the cycle and you have to spend the first 10 minutes just catching your breath because you've struggled in the water. So, there's it's like a little bit more discipline people, I think, need in the pool, and not just bashing up and down.
You make a very good point there. Even, you know, I've coached alongside, especially these extreme triathlons, Fergus being a good example. Fergus not being a good example of making the mistake. He is as efficient as probably needs to be in the water. He doesn't come out of the water dying. He comes out of the water knowing what his pacing should have been, and we work that quite well. But I do watch people come out of the water absolutely ruined, and you think your bite's going to be horrible now. It's going to be really, and you're going to have to hope at some point that you just kind of try and relax. But as you say, if that individual had just slowed down a bit and smoothed their way through that process, by the time they get on their bike, they've now got their full cycling capacity, or as much of it as possible. So, great advice.
That's good.
I guess that's a good segue into what we discussed. Number 3 would be there. I've mentioned extreme triathlons and swimming outdoors and things. And I know that at the moment you are going through, or you've been through, well, you're still, perhaps you can tell me, in a kind of a transitioning process from all the lane work, the pool work, and the sport specific work that you've done over the years, now into a lot of open water work and some big things literally on the horizon for you, an ever changing, ever moving horizon. If you can, maybe if you contextualize that for us, because I'm being a bit vague there, and tell people what that transition's been. And then I think number 3, in terms of mistake, I'll preempt this a little bit, would be in not really understanding environmental considerations and changes. And we'll come back to that. I'll trigger that again in a moment. But if you can contextualize your own transition.
So I was a pool swimmer for 15 plus years. Spent countless hours in a pool environment, which is great because it's very controlled. You can work on technique and intensities, and you know, that was my world. That's not the only world in swimming, though. There's a lot you can go after that, and I'm now at the point where I've stopped the indoor competitive swimming to a certain point. I can now be like, right, let's go try open water swimming. Maybe I do a triathlon. Maybe I do some cold water immersion and kind of get into that world.
I'm giggling because it's one of those things you think's a good idea.
I know.
You think, shit, I wish I'd never entered into this.
I know, right? I was regretting it now. But yeah, so I've kind of now started to explore outdoor swimming, open water swimming, both in cold and warm environments. And I haven't done it too much competitively, but like from a challenge point of view and a personal like mission, I have. So I'm the English Channel as part of a relay team. 2 years ago, charity, £250,000 raised, like an amazing experience. Absolutely loved it.
Impressive to see.
It was me and the boys. It was just such a great time. That was like my first, I've done a channel swim, which are, if you're going to do open water challenges, you know, distance, it's the English Channel is the number one thing.
It's crazy.
It's mad.
Let's just say that.
It's mad.
Crazy.
And for people that don't know, there's no wetsuits. There's no hanging onto the side of the boat for a bit of rest and a catch up. It's once you're in, you're on your own. You're next to the boat and that's it. So there's loads that go into that, and I was like really interested by that. As when I did it in the relay, because essentially I did 1/5 of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, right, I'm gonna have to do the whole thing now. So yeah, in this terrifies me.
Again, you didn't need to do it.
I didn't need to. I know. Gun to my head, right? I don't know. I sort of felt like it.
You were it's your own hand holding the gun.
Yeah, I know,
oh, damn.
Anyway, we're here now. So yeah, then this scares me. But like in a few weeks, I've been saying months now. It's now.
Yeah, it's weeks. How long out? We are now
5th
on
of August.
What's the date now? Yeah, you're only about
so nine or so. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Don't remind me, but yeah. So something in Channel Solo, which is a whole other kettle of fish. It's nutrition comes into play, just determination and grit, and like real kind of my first experience of what will be like ultra endurance, in my opinion. I'm not sure how you would define ultra endurance, but I
think this is beyond ultra endurance.
Okay.
This is extreme ultra endurance.
So I could say I'm ultra endurance.
Oh, for sure, man.
So yeah, like that's a whole new world to me, and I'm really, really excited by that because I'm getting to use the kind of the skills and my passion and like love for swimming in a completely different environment.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that. They go from the pool to the open water, and they might not swim the channel, but they might do a triathlon that is based in a lake somewhere, or maybe it's the sea triathlon as well. Like there's so much more to think about. So for me, like it's a new discipline, so I've had to learn a little bit about it. I've also done like the cold extreme, and I've done like ice swimming, and for anyone that's gone into the water and struggled with their breath or it feeling different, I'm a very experienced swimmer. I've felt that now, so I get it. So when
that's good for people to hear, actually, because it's easy to look in, and I suppose I encourage everybody to think about it this way. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sitting across from Dan Wallace, who, as we know, is a legend, and in the swimming world, at least, I'm sure in many other parts of your life too. But for you to then say, that kind of cold water shock, that kind of all those experiences that you're having, we've all had, and they're very much normalizing this. It's really cool to hear. I'm sure it's not nice from your perspective, but from mine, it is very cool to hear.
I obviously didn't find it nice, but I was like, "Oh, this is I've not felt this before."
Again, from me looking in, the fact that you're feeling those things, not getting in and going, "Well, now this is just easy as piss for me." It's not. It's those things are everybody's experience.
I enjoy the struggles, and I think that what swimming is, or what it can be, is it can be quite humbling. You can be a fit, strong person. You go to the pool, you go to the open water and go, I'm, no pun intended, out of my depth here. So I felt that. So I do. It's really interesting. So a lot of people go through that transition from pool to open water, and whether they take it down the triathlon route, the channel swimming route, or the cold swimming route, it's going to be very new. There's going to be things they're going to have to think about. So like the first thing is, triathlons are all typically done with a wetsuit, so you've got that layer of protection when it comes to warmth, but the sensational feeling of, this isn't a heated pool anymore. This is a couple of degrees colder, depending on where your triathlon is. That sensation of having your face submerged is on a whole new level. So it's back to the breathing again, right? So if you struggle with your breathing in the pool, go away and work on what we've spoken about, but do the same in the slightly colder temperatures as well. So it's like that kind of pins and needle feeling in your face, the shortness of breath. It's like you still have to go through those motions of being like, all right, this is okay. I can deal with this. This feels a little bit different. So that's the first thing. It's just like the sensation of swimming in the open water. I don't know if you've ever been out, like properly out at sea. Maybe you've jumped off the boat or something. You're on a boat party or something. I don't know. You're out in the fishing boat, and you're physically out in the ocean. Mental. Like for most people, number one fear, and I get that. It's having the feeling of like not being in a pool.
This
like
kind of vastness.
It's that vastness, and I think it's like if you get your head around it, it's really special to feel. But it's that feeling of, okay, I'm not in a pool anymore. I'm in the open water. I'm in the ocean, and just kind of being okay with that. So it's the number one thing. Is people just think it's the same mental and physical feeling. It's not. It does feel a little bit different.
Sorry to interrupt. That sensation itself, we hear that a lot, and like you say, that's really, really common. Is this kind of overarching feeling of vastness, or suddenly the world is very, very deep underneath you, and you can't swim 2-3 meters and grab a hold of the edge, and you can't swim back, find the shallow end or whatever. Would you suggest, not dissimilar to the breathing suggestion at the beginning of the podcast, would you suggest getting out there and just treading water and just trying to allow yourself to relax into that idea?
100%. And it's like, you're always told when you get into the open water, or especially cold water, it's like, take your time.
Yeah.
100% take your time. Get your body used to what that feeling is. Now, obviously, when you're in like a racing environment, say you're doing a triathlon, you don't have that time at the start. So it's going through the motions in training.
Yeah.
And going in, getting your breath under control, acclimatizing to the water, just getting that muscle memory of, okay, this is what it feels like. So if you jump into the cold water for the first time, immediate stress, your body's going, what the hell is going on? You do it more often, your body goes, I've been here before, I've felt this before. So it's like going through the motions of just getting your breath under control, relaxing your stress, bringing everything down, losing that tension in your traps and everything. Do that in your training so that when you do go into the start of your triathlon, your Ironman, whatever it is, your body's not freaking out. Your body knows, so you can get your breath under control straight away. Like, I know you had a rough experience getting into an event at the swimming at the start, and it's just maybe because your body wasn't used to that. And a lot of people do. They kind of have a bit of a freak out because you're trying to not only just get your breathing and your body and your stroke under control, but you're also trying to perform. There's a lot of things going on around you. So like for a lot of people that have never done an open water event, whether it's triathlon, open water swim, it's like that initial reaction can totally throw you off.
Yeah, I think to expand on that environmental stuff, if somebody's getting into triathlon, my experience wasn't necessarily the open water itself or the cold. It was actually that kind of washing machine effect of all those people.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting hit and it knocked me out, which is very, very unusual and very, very Jonny pain. But but the fact that it happened, actually, I could have preempted that a little bit, because I had been in open water many times and never had a problem, but I had never been in the water with other people around me. And not in the pool, not anywhere. All of a sudden, these bodies close to me, my stroke went to hell.
Yeah.
I was under the water, I was above the water, I was fanning around, and no wonder I got clunked. I was probably not swimming in my quote-unquote lane. I was just all over the shop. People do crawl over the top of you and all sorts of shit in there.
Crazy.
But to your point, exposing yourself slowly to these environmental pressures is obviously necessary.
And there's some that are harder to do, so like that, you're describing there like pack swimming in a pack, whether that is a group start or once you're out in the race, you're in a pack and it's being close. And that's a skill, if you do well, can really help your race, because you can kind of draft off one another, but you have to be comfortable with someone's elbow being
proximity,
so it's like, it's having that like spatial awareness of being able to swim with others in the cold when there's a lot going on. You're all trying to swim essentially as fast as you can. There's a lot to think about physically and mentally. So it's trying to practice that as much as you can, understanding about drafting, how close I need to be. Am I sitting on someone's feet? Am I sitting on their hip? What do I feel more comfortable with doing? Sitting on the feet is easy because you might get a foot to the face, but it's, the nice soft ankles these swimmers have, so that's okay. Whereas they've got hard elbows. So,
which I experienced.
Which you've experienced now. So, it's immersing yourself in those environments as much as you can.
Yeah.
There's then like figuring out, when you go swimming in the pool, we're lucky we can follow that black line or that blue line. I see it in my nightmares all the time now, that blue line. But you don't have that in Loch Lomond or wherever it is.
No, there's nothing there.
So it's like, right, how do I don't want to trust the guy next to me. He's going the right way. Because I've seen it. There's great stories. It was, I think it was 2008 Olympic Games, a 10K race. There's a swimmer called David Davies.
His parents had imagination there. David Davies.
I know. He's a good lad, though. He's good. He's a very well-renowned distance swimmer for Team GB. And he was at the front of the pack, and the pack split into two. One of it's like two on one side, two on another. Now one group's going the right way, one group's going the wrong way. How do you know if you're going the right way? You're not basing yourself off them. You have to figure out. You have to look. You have to sight. You have to have spatial awareness of like the direction and the route. So it's little things like that. So learning how to sight. And I spoke about, lifting your head up to breathe and not letting that impact your stroke. It's like, okay, how can I now lift my head up enough where I'm actually seeing where I'm going for a split second, but again, not killing my speed, So it's about refining those skills. There's going to be, it's exciting though, because it's like, you're swimming in a new environment, you have to do it a slightly different way. So it's learning how to swim in a pack. It's being okay with swimming in the cold or a colder environment. It's okay. Or it's learning how to kind of sight and know where I'm going. So it's like all these things that people maybe don't expect. And I've seen it online. It's like, I've got my first triathlon next week. I'm going for my first open water swim today. It's like,
oh, wow.
It's like, okay, good luck
with that.
Because it is different. For me, I find that really exciting because I've done the pool swimming. I've done it.
Yeah.
So I'm blue in the face. Now I'm experiencing the outdoor swimming, the cold water swimming. At one point, I'll probably end up doing a triathlon. So it's like the competitive kind of group swimming as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. Like I urge everybody to, if you start as a pool swimmer, try what it's like outdoors, because you get to do it in more exciting places as well. Like I've been lucky enough to swim. I mean, Scotland is great. You got some amazing scenery to swim here, but also like over in the warmer climates as well, like swimming through lakes where you don't have to have a wetsuit on. You're just in your budgie smugglers. Like it's a nice experience, man. It's good to see the world.
Yeah. I guess before we wrap up here, it's worth saying that with this environment, we have these caveats in our programming, is to say that, and you'll firmly agree, is that make sure you're safe as well. We're talking about going out and swimming in lakes and this thing and that thing, and make sure there's somebody knows where you are, somebody with you. You've got all the safety mechanisms. It's easy to think, I'm good at swimming, I'll just dive in this bloody water, but you don't know what the current's like. You don't. Yeah, so just
and I think on that, like,
it's easy to get that wrong, isn't it?
Totally easy to get that wrong, because like I've been for so many swims on my own, but I do also appreciate that you can kind of get a bit uncomfortable out there on your own at times, and you don't want that to happen to you if you're not a very capable swimmer. So like I urge you to go with your mates. It's better to go with your mates anyway. Go with one other person.
Oh yeah, share that experience for sure. Yeah.
It's better to do it with someone for sure. And there's like things like wearing a toe float, for example, giving yourself visibility, because you're not the only one in the water. There's most likely going to be boat users depending on where you go. It's not going to be a private shut off lake. So you want to make sure you're being seen by like fishermen, fishing rods. Last thing you want to do is swim through a fishing line. It's like all these little things you got to think about. So protect yourself in that aspect, and then kind of go with someone or at least tell someone where you're going. And you don't want to have a freak out in the water on your own. It's okay to freak out together. At least
absolutely. So let's summarize the 3 key points that we feel, or that you feel. I'm inclined to agree because you're the expert.
Yeah.
With swimming, especially people coming to swimming, maybe from a more novice perspective.
Yeah.
First point there is breathing.
Yeah.
And our kind of summary of how to deal with that would be take it slowly, get in, understand it. Don't be frightened to be by the side of the pool and just submerge in your face and just getting used to that breathing pattern, which you've 100%. Eloquently described as backwards.
It's the
in
wrong
through
way.
the mouth, out through the nose. Get used to that. Forget the ego. And I think that kind of speaks very much across those different tips you've given. Tip 2 being being around technique, around about understanding that technique. And a great tip you've given us would be to understand your own stroke rate and use that rather than speed and distance and how fast can I go today, and just understand your own efficiency through that process. Yeah. And then I think the third tip, which is the one that kind of encapsulates them all, is this kind of overarching, what I'm getting from you is this opportunity to experience these new environments and this new everything that swimming's brought you want to give to people, but make sure and do that in a controlled manner. Understand that your environment changes, that there are different pressures. Take that slowly. We're right back to holding on to the side of the pool. Hold on to the side of the water. Take your time.
Same thing.
Take your time and experience it with joy rather than ego at the front. I think is an overarching kind of umbrella for all this. But those are the 3 things that you're finding that people come up against. I think actually from our experience at Omnia, which is far less swimming driven, and certainly you're the expert, we've experienced these things from our people as well. That those are the issues that they're up against. I'm not going to pretend that I'm anywhere close to being able to offer the same kind of advice that you can directly, and we love to lean in on your expertise here and kind of pick your brains as much as possible. But where can people find you directly? Where can people learn more about what it is that you can offer in terms of swimming understanding, and how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so everything we've spoken about today and so much more is stuff that I am trying to kind of pass on and deliver to any type of swimmer, whether you're transitioning into swimming from other sports or you're picking up for the first time and you've just never really had the correct guidance around it, but you want to get better at it, is head to swimmer.com. So that's swimmer without the E. It's kind of our my online kind of platform, swimming platform now, that has a range of kind of courses for different disciplines, different abilities, different goals. And it is focused kind of around that technical side of it. There's certainly a programming, you have to practice something and get better at it, but there's a learning aspect of it. So I'm trying to pass on that experience. So Swimmer HQ on Instagram, swimmer.com online, and kind of, explore that and let me know what you think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to get into it. Probably try and pick your brains directly, but that's a privilege I think I can try and exploit.
You got a free pass.
Listen, Dan. One thing I always really enjoy, I really did on the first podcast, and I have during this, is your infectious love for swimming and for the process in a not nerdy way, and I mean that in the most friendly manner I can. Is that even the technique stuff, I feel like I can feel the joy coming from you and all that, because we've talked about this before offline. Is that when you can kind of hand somebody over that one little change in technique or that one little change in their breathing control, and you see that come back and they say, I got this distance today and I felt so great. And I guess feeling great is the one thing that you get the feedback from. Yeah, I feel that every time we speak, and it's a real pleasure to be in your company. And I think anybody that comes to you through Swimmer, through us, if we do things together, which I'm hoping we can do, is going to experience that as well. So thank you very much for bringing that. And I think we'll get you back on as soon as we can, certainly before August if possible, because I'd like to dig deeper, maybe get Tom up and talk about your the crazy nutritional protocols that must have to go into the channel swimming. We won't even touch on that now, but I know that's complex and I'm very interested. So let's get you back. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming in today.
No worries, Jonny. Cheers.
Cheers, pal.
Thank you.